Afternoon. Okay, thank you. Important. So I don't think I need to wake you up after John. It's been a fantastic presentation, fantastic interview. My name is Giovanni Battistini, and I'm going to talk about how a relatively new team, Open Innovation Science, was able to create a partnership network in the last almost 3 years of life with those numbers that you see. The POC, proof of concept, I see it's a common motive across all the presentation. So this is me again. My experience is before joining Ferrero about 3 years ago. I ran open innovation. I ran a global innovation discovery for Firmenich, a flavor and fragrances company. I built a taste modulation business unit there. Before that, I was running an incubator, University of Arizona, spun off a company. We were doing cognitive technologies. And my next company is going to be MetLife. I do want to work for John because 30%, not only because of his energy, but because 30% of innovators, that ready really to accept innovation. It's a number I never heard of in a company, not in my experience, and so it's a great number to work for. So this is Ferrero. Ferrero is a chocolate confectionery leader, #1 in Europe, now #3 in the US. We about $12 billion in revenues, 35,000 employees around the world. Just to give you some point of reference, if you haven't figured it out yet, it's not just about Ferrero Rocher. It's about Nutella, it's about Kinder, about Tic Tac. These are all products, and actually I would say categories that Ferrero has been able to launch and innovate on and create basically new categories and defining a role of category leader in those categories, like Nutella, for example, because of its 70 years heritage of innovation. And that's one of the reasons why Ferrero is still growing twice the market speed. 3 years ago, Ferrero approached me because they wanted to go the way they normally go, a contrarian way, and they wanted to create a team that would complement what the company had been doing very successfully for many years, from a concept of an idea of a product, go out and look for the science and the technology that was able to implement it. The more difficult the product, the better, right? More difficult to replicate, easier to create category leaders that way. What they asked me to do, they asked us to do, now we are a team of about 20 people around the world, was to create a team, an open innovation team, focused on science and technology. So go the other way around. From the science, get to the product, okay? And try to find the science and technology innovation that can be impactful in the long, medium term for Ferrero innovation plans. Not an easy task, very challenging, very exciting. As you can imagine, there is a lot of science and technology out there. So the way we approach the problem is really try to focus on how to select, first of all. Can we have a process? If we need to do it on a global scale, how are we going to do so that we can all share a language and we can all share a strategy? We can actually pursue global opportunities without having to connect every hour of the day. And so we did that by creating what we call the peel process. We start from the idea from innovation streams. We started from innovation in science and technology streams. We defined 4 of them: metabolic response innovation, agri-science, biotechnology, packaging, and material science. Now, in this innovation stream, we identify innovation trends. We intersect them with ecosystem trends, where is going regulatory, where is going, which is very important for food, where consumers are going, where competitors are doing. And at the intersection with these two sets, and we intersect also with our priority, business priorities, that's where we define the hunting ground, what we call the opportunity areas. So within these opportunity areas, we start scouting. We look for several opportunities, from universities to startups to maybe even conventional suppliers, established suppliers. And we map some of this. We map about 30% of the companies we looked into. We map against the potential impact versus maturity. We define what we call the return on the future that allows us to not only to measure our performance, but also to make decisions. And based on this return on the future, we select priorities. We prioritize, we select which ones to actually spend real money, right? Do the proof of concept. And that's where we start engaging in a more comprehensive way with the startup, with the innovators. At the end of this cycle, if we are okay, we build a business case around it, and we present the opportunity to our other innovation stakeholders within Ferrero to execute on. So that's how we operate. So these are some of the numbers that we were able to, some of the accomplishments, and 3 years is not a lot of time. But we've been able to establish 3 global locations. We are in North America, we're in New York. We are in Europe, in Luxembourg, and we are in Singapore for Asia. We are working on right now on 11 hunting grounds. Some of them are really reshuffling right now because we're not completely satisfied with the performance because the return on the future is not satisfactory. It's about 200 opportunities identified, mapped. So it's about probably 600 we looked at. Currently mapped about 200 and about 12 dozen proof of concepts underway as of today, and they normally last 1 to 2 years. So and sometimes are much shorter than that. So that's how much we can actually manage. We don't have internal labs. We actually use external network of partners to manage this proof of concept, and sometimes we rely on our own internal innovation labs. One of the projects that as an example, we are doing is this Hazelnut computer platform with the MIT Media Lab. We're also members there. Hazelnut is a critical raw material for us. We control a very large share of the hazelnuts worldwide. We buy a lot of them, especially we buy the highest possible quality because the perfectly round hazelnut that goes into your Ferrero Rocher has to be perfect from a shape perspective and from an organoleptic perspective. The hazelnut you put in your Nutella that defines the flavor profile is critical. So for us, hazelnut is really critical. The problem with hazelnut, very little knowledge, scientific knowledge around this crop. Compare it to cocoa, compare it to almonds, very little, and much more complex, about more than 30 cultivars of hazelnuts. So in order to accelerate the pace of development of knowledge, around the scientific knowledge around hazelnut, we looked at the Open Agri initiative at the Media Lab, and we thought, why don't we apply to trees? Why don't we build a control environment where we can collect data, where we can control everything from light to humidity, temperature, nutrients, microbiota, everything around the plant, around the tree. And this platform is going to be open data, so we can distribute this, a large number of experiments around the world, hopefully leveraging research universities also attracted by the data. So it's really applying the platform business model, if you're familiar with it, where consumer and producers of a currency, in this case knowledge, interact and add value to the platform. And that's what we are doing now. We're building the second prototype. We hope, we already started working with some university. We hope that this will exponentially generate adoption and knowledge creation around this crop, so critical. Success, well, I don't know if we can claim a lot of successes yet. We're very young as an organization. Definitely, we believe that it's very important to be vested at the top. So we report directly to the executive chairman, who's also the owner of Ferrero, and the chief operating officer. very much connected, so very to the top. That's essential for everybody running this type of initiatives. Clear methodology, I already talked about, very important because that's established a common language, that's established a way for us to talk and discuss the same way and evaluate the same way opportunities. Metrics, we do have this metric, return on the future, that really allows us to make a balanced portfolio decision every time we decide to invest resources and sometimes make investments, or to really make sure that the potential impact, if you weigh it with the risk you're taking, is actually balanced, and that's what the return on the future measure. So that's for us it's a target metric. We are evaluated, all of us, around this, how well we're doing on this metric, but also measure how well we're doing in the different areas we are exploring. And then, of course, we are passionate about platform business models. We try to use it ourselves inside the way we actually do this type of job, but also we try to look for opportunities that can generate momentum on their own, if possible, like the Hazelnut Computer Platform. Missteps, many, as probably all of us. Problem number one, I think we started doing from a perspective of expanding, making our job very transparent to everybody. That was the biggest mistake because we created some sort of cultural clash inside the company, some frustration at the beginning, because a company not used to deal with early stage technology, it's not ready sometimes to look for early stage opportunities when we still haven't evaluated. So we realized that after a year, we kind of changed a little bit our model. We defined the transparency and interaction where we wanted. We underestimated proof of concept. Proof of concept is not only evaluating the technology, it's really about showing how a technology can be used in a technology push type of model. And also very difficult for us really find the right balance between really being relevant and being disruptive. Because if you're trying to be relevant to that maybe 30% that John was talking about, means very often to look for incremental innovation, not really disruptive innovation. And that's not our job. And that creates a friction. And I think we haven't managed yet to find the right balance around that. And that's really something about, it's all about the culture of the company you're working in. Future state, well, clearly we are going to work very hard now on getting more adoption of the opportunities we are incubating and really find the right incubation model. And where we actually have platforms going out, like the Hazelnut Computer Platform, really focus on generating the momentum that these platforms need. This being said, I'm open to a Q&A.
It's a great presentation, Giovanni. A few questions. We'll go back to the beginning, in fact. You mentioned that you have 185 partners.
Yeah.
How? How do you get 185? How do you manage such a big network, and how do you identify the right ones?
So first of all, we have there are partners and partners. It's about 200, the total numbers. 185 are the actual innovators we interacted with, and over the course of 2.5, almost 3 years, we actually mapped them and we had an interaction. So we kind of divide two classes of partners, the platform partners and the opportunity partners. Okay. So the platform partners are a smaller number, and this is where about 20 gap between your number and my number is. So the platform partners are the ones we kind of classify them in visionaries, connectors, and enablers. Mm-hmm. So the visionaries are the ones that tell us where the world is going. The connectors are mostly VCs, but not only VCs are influenced. These are the people who can bring us the opportunities. And the enablers are those who actually help us execute, put an idea on the ground, put an opportunity on the ground. So they have an interesting competence, technology. In the biotech, there is a lot of those enablers. And then you have the opportunity partners. And I think I already answered your question, because how we get to the opportunity partners is really building the network of the platform part. The connectors help us. We started doing, at the beginning, one-to-one discussions with different platform partners around that. Then we started running what we call roundtables with them. And we try to generate the value we need to generate in order to receive the value from the network. This is in the spirit of the platform model, business model. Mm-hmm.
So let me touch exactly on that point. About in one of the main steps for success, you mentioned the notion of fostering more of a platform model. So we're in an era where everybody wants innovation and everybody wants to be a platform. Can you talk a bit about how do you incentivize members to be, if I look at the hazelnut story, it's a great story. I mean, my kids love Nutella, so I do care deeply for the success of that. But how do you incentivize members to play in that platform?
Well, we don't know yet, in the sense that we are testing now the ground. I think it's a process of progressive approximation. We do have a design in mind. You have to, there are a number of factors obviously contribute normally to the success of a platform. I mean, there is plenty of literature discussing that, but the real proof of the pudding is really, doing it. First of all, you need to find the right balance between producer and consumers. Mm-hmm. In our case, it's the scientific community, it's the research community. In order to do that, you need to seed the platform. We are going to run the first 20-some experiments. But interesting enough, we already find partners like Rutgers or Wageningen University very focused on these crops and very focused on control agriculture who want to be part of it because they see the value of that. That will help. The platform has to be easy to use, of course, has to generate data. Our hope is that if you think about the producer or consumer of our platform, are producing and consuming knowledge and data. And so data generate knowledge. Knowledge should attract scientists who are actually attracted by data and knowledge. And therefore, they will generate more data, more knowledge. That's the whole concept. And so if we seed the platform with the right type of starting knowledge and starting data, with the right recipe for the weather, for the right type of information about the varieties we already tested, we believe that that should be an incentive enough. We have to take the cost appropriately at the right level. We have to subsidize. We are working with Inter-American Development Bank, for example, to figure out whether they can actually help us with that, and we are going to try to pursue that path in Europe, for example, as well. But it has to be something that everybody can build themselves. Everybody can, hire somebody to build it if they're necessary, but totally open, obviously, from a data perspective, from a hardware and software perspective. Mm-hmm. And that's what the platform is about.
How do you measure the success? That's a question that everybody asks probably, but how do you measure the success of such a project? What's the timeline to judge that?
This is one of our longest term projects because it's not going to generate a real value. Some of the value will come early. We believe in the next couple of years. For example, varietal selection is very important as we develop new land. That's something that you can put a 3-year-old hazelnut. We are testing that if it works and in this environment and actually thrive. And so there you can stress the different trees and different climates patterns and select which variety works better in different climates in different regions of the world. That by itself should allow us to identify better suitable land faster and deliver value, immediate value, not immediate, obviously, because it's going to take another 2 or 3 years, 3 years at least, to actually generate hazelnuts. But at least you have over the next couple of years, you have a data that allow you to make decisions and invest in the right places, mm-hmm. and share this knowledge with the growers, which is very important. Longer term, I think you're going to see this, climate change is going to impact, the way the configuration of the crop worldwide. So definitely this is also a hedging tool that hopefully in a 10 years time frame will definitely help us a lot given the criticality of this.
Does that go, this hedging strategy you're talking about, does that go into your decision whether to go into such a project or not? How do you make a decision whether the go, no go?
Well, we make this decision. is interesting. We actually made decision all about the return of the future. The return of the future is nothing else that, I mean, we have two different types of return of the future, but really measuring impact discounted by the risk you're taking. Mm-hmm. And you have different way of calculating, but in a more mature stage, it's really calculating the IRR and discounting that by a measure of the technical and the market risk. So that has a benefit, not only for what I was saying before, but being able to make decisions, but also not to discuss IRR or financials at this early stage. It's very difficult to, my previous experience has been, right, you actually come off with 45% IRR, you got to invest this, you return 20, 25, and the controller tells you, hey, you said 45, how come? And that's a common mistake, right? IRR should be, in this type of case, a decision tool, right? You measure, so the ROF allows us to make this type of decision, but it's just an index, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a threshold. So we, for example, have a threshold at 4. Below 4, we really want to go. Now, we ran these numbers, we look at the potential, and we figure out that in a conservative, if the business model works, in a conservative scenario, we were well above the 4, and we decided to go ahead with this. Mm-hmm.
Let me go back to the point about time. I mean, I think in any firm, there is pressure to generate results, but many of the projects you mentioned are fairly long-term. Even you mentioned the hazelnut one, maybe being a longer term. What's the pressure that you see within the organization for you to demonstrate results quickly? Is there pressure, no pressure?
Yeah, there is some pressure. It's interesting because when you start something like this, it's amazing how somebody in the company has the vision, the executive chairman, CEO had the vision of what it was supposed to be, but then everybody has a different expectation and understanding. So we realize now in our third evolution of the group that we will need to communicate extensively about our mandate and make people understand what is our time frame. At the same time, there is a pressure to deliver sometimes results, and we hope we have a good blend of quick wins, that address, very targeted solutions and are delivering already value and will deliver value in the next 2 years time frame. That's very important. If you don't have that, you lose your credibility, you lose the momentum. At the same time, as the time goes by, the honeymoon is over, and is more and more difficult to push. We see the visionary projects. So we got our Obamacare earlier on in our process, get visionary projects like the Hazelnut Computer Platform approved. At the same time now, it's about execution, it's about making that happen and reinforcing our credibility. If we don't get that, we're going to fail.
So you talk about credibility, but I'm sure a question people have here is about your point about transparency.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what brought you to make that recommendation on what you can talk a little bit about that, of the point of trying to not be too transparent?
Well, I don't think this applies to everybody, quite frankly. And I think it is all about the culture and what you're facing. I was coming with from my previous experience at Firmenich, and with my naivete, I thought that this would be getting people on board earlier on as you were exploring opportunity was always a good thing, because I had made the opposite mistake before, and so I didn't want to repeat that mistake, even if, luckily we were successful in what we did. So when then I did not realize how Ferrero innovation community was really not used to deal with this type of early stage technologies in many cases, not all the cases, by the way. And so it's a new business mindset. It's a new approach. It's a new cultural, it's a cultural shift. Mm-hmm. And so you really have to go with the pace of the organization. If you actually go too fast, you're not gonna be able to win any. So we realized that, basically we're generating frustration. Giving some, new ingredients to our product labs, and, the ingredient was not ready, was inconsistent, was not. But they didn't, we realized that the approach was not to work with the startup building this grid and to actually make it better. We're just saying, hey, it doesn't work, right? So we realized that there was a way too early stage for us to, so that's why we decided, okay, let's do the things different. Let's set up a virtual lab of external partners, and let's test as much as we can. And when the technology we believe is before the proof of concept is almost ready, then maybe we run the proof of concept with our internal people. Maybe we run it outside, but that's when, but we do our homework before sharing everything. Otherwise, you just definitely lose the credibility, and people start thinking you're a little bit cuckoo. Yeah.
So we have one more question, time for one more question. So I would like actually to go exactly in that direction. Culture is clearly a big part here in trying to accelerate that and then being transparent or not. Can you give an example for one firm that's your model for having the right culture to drive innovation, not in your industry?
Well, I'm a big, I know Amazon was already mentioned before, and I'm a big fan of, because of this discussion of, everything at Amazon runs by platform with API, and that's a great model. That's a great model that allows people to make decisions in a compartmentalized way and interact through very well-defined interfaces. Absolutely. I also love what Google X has been doing. Mm-hmm. We borrow a lot of that of their methodology in terms of really testing, using proof of concept to test the weakest link and figure out how to actually kill opportunities very early on and not to wait until the very end before you really test the very tough things. So these are two companies definitely are a benchmark for us. Yeah.
Giovanni, thanks so much. Thank
you.
Thank you.